House in Baltimore and Purple football next week. Luke Jones will be out in Owings Mills. But in the meantime, there is a baseball trading deadline, a litany of arms to deal for the Orioles, and plenty of baseball to discuss here. We bring on Justin McGuire, one of our defending champions, a lifer Oriole fan, craft beer lover, and you can follow his journey out at J. McGuire MLB. Many years at Sporting News now with Fansided, and also doing a baseball book podcast that you can follow at Baseball Book Pod on Twitter as well. Justin, you've had those two beers and that ball and that glove up on your Twitter as long as I've known you with your Pie Trainer Twitter look. The two beers, that's one for you and one for me for the trading deadline here. Dude, this Oriole thing right now, I mean, it's gotten off the rails over the last 2 months since the last time we talked, and now we're up on this trading deadline, and I think as a fan, as a vested fan, I want to know what's going on, who's running the show, and what the strategy is. And I know this drill, and you do too, over 25 years. It often feels like there is no strategy here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you're each going to need more than one beer to get through this trade deadline, I think, to get through this season. Yeah, the Orioles are a disaster right now. I mean, I think anybody who's been following them knows that since, the beginning of May, they've been about the worst team in baseball. They have, the worst run differential in the AL now. The pitching is historically bad. And, everything points to them being big sellers at the deadline. I mean, logic tells you they should be trading everybody who could bring them back anything in value. I suspect what we're going to see, though, is something more of like a half measure where they'll try to trade a couple of guys, but they'll hang on to the big names, except maybe for Bretton. And it'll be kind of a, like I said, a piddling kind of, well, we're sort of in, we're sort of out. It's not really going to accomplish much of anything, unfortunately. That's my fear.
Well, and the Machado thing sits in the middle of this because if 18 months from now he's up in Philadelphia at a press conference or Boston or New York, Chicago, wherever it's going to be, it doesn't matter. Miami, I mean, if he's not here and they get nothing for him, and they don't win a World Series. And right now, look, you'd have to be optimistic to the point of stupid if you think that they are a World Series contender next year, given what the pipeline in the organization is, the money they have sunk into the likes of Chris Davis, the fact that they have no pitching, and knowing that Buck, Duquette, Jones, Machado, Brock, and Britton, if they don't deal them in the next 2 weeks or in the offseason, will all be dangling going into their last contract next year. They had their chance. They had their run. They had their window. That window is shut, and there needs to be some sort of evaluation that's honest from within the forget the fanboys on the internet and, my heart bleeds for Manny Machado. In any other organization, if the owner weren't Peter Angelos and this weren't the Baltimore Orioles, they would be considering all options right now, including, like, if Machado's not going to take our money, and by the way, he's batting .230, which I don't know that they had a plan for that, but Machado is the most important part of all of this. But beyond that, there's Angelos and Duquette, and what are we getting back for our Brocks and our Brittons, and who is making that deal, and who will be here when those bananas get ripe,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you touched on what is the key thing here. Are they making this trade deadline about a total rebuild, or are they making it about punting on 2017 and hoping that they can contend in 2018, the last year for those guys that you just mentioned, all on the final year of their contract. And that's what I fear, is that they're going to take that approach. Well, we can't win this year, but if we just sort of do a few things here and there, we can contend in 2018. No, they can't. You said it, the pitching is just not there. Even if they were somehow to get their lineup in shape that they wanted it to be, who's going to pitch for them? This pitching staff's a disaster, and there's nobody on the farm who's coming up to help. There's no chance they're getting any of the big free agents. There's no chance they're making a trade for a big impact pitcher. I mean, what's the rotation in 2018, and how is it going to be any better than 2017? I don't see anything indicating it'll be any better, and because of that, I think Machado has to be on the block. You have to at least listen. You have to at least see what people are willing to give you. I'm not saying you've got to trade him. Maybe the right offer isn't there. But if you can get the offer, if you can get the prospects to help you rebuild this barren farm system, you got to go for it, because 2018 ain't going to be a contending year either, and there's no reason not to jump when you can to get something for him.
It's kind of weird, and look, Angelos is so far removed, and he's so old, and he's so tired and angry and hiding. It's really hard to believe that even after the Yankees did this last year, and you look at where the Cubs have been, where the Astros are, that there is a life cycle here. You know what I mean? And the life cycle is up for them, and clearly the Yankees and the Red Sox are on that ascension trail right now. Everyone around baseball can see that with their young prospects, and you've got to be keeping up with that, not thinking about which pitcher might take which number 4 starter is going to take your Ubaldo Jimenez or your Giovanni Gallardo money in the offseason. If you're really in this to win a championship at some point, I'm just wondering who's making the decisions. They've never been good at this, Justin.
Well, it's clear that some people are making some decisions and other people are making other decisions, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? That's what seems pretty clear to me. And we know Chris Davis, we know where that decision was made. And right now, I think Manny Machado, that's going to ultimately have to come from Peter Angelos. They're not going to trade him without him signing off on it. We know that. From what I've seen, he's reluctant to do that, or at least the organization is saying they're not going to make him, they're not going to make Adam Jones available.
The weirdest part about this that makes it even worse, it's almost like the incompetence in our government. When the person running the place really doesn't have a clue and doesn't know what's going on just in general, if someone were to bring Yon Moncada, in for Machado, he wouldn't even know who that is. There's no way to evaluate a couple of AA prospects who have high ceilings, and that the nerdery that goes into baseball scouting at the A and the AA level of what constitutes an Adam Jones and a Chris Tillman, and what constitutes a Chris Richard and a Jacobo Sequoia, right?
Right. It's a tough thing, and there's no guarantees, and that's why it's always tough. You trade somebody of Manny Machado's caliber for a couple of top prospects, and those prospects don't work out, people are going to be second-guessing you forever. But, you can't worry about that if you're running a Major League Baseball team. You have to – look what the White Sox have done in the last year for Eaton and for Sale and for Quintana. They've gone from, sort of a middle-of-the-road or even worse farm system to one of the top farm systems by, selling off their people who had value and really getting top prospects for them. Now, are all those prospects going to transform into Major League stars? No. Some of them will make it, some of them won't. But they've put themselves in a better position to win than they were, in the future than they were a year ago, when they were just sort of hanging on with a couple of talented players, but not anything to show for it. And I think that's what the Orioles have to worry about. Is they had that 5-year run where things went pretty well, and everything kind of broke right for them, and now everything is kind of coming home to roost. And it's time to cut your losses, guys. It's time to say everybody who has any value is available, and just make us your best offer. And if they do this right, they could come out of it with a much, much better setup for the future, for the next 10 years instead of the next 2 years, which is what they're thinking about now, or the next year and a half, even really is what they're thinking about now. And I'm with you. I'm afraid they're not going to do that. They're not going to go all in, which is what you really need to do. Did the Astros, they just accepted that they were going to suck for a few years, and they really suck in a way that even the Orioles haven't in recent years. But now look at them now. They're the best team in baseball. They're set up to be a great team for several years to come because they were willing to eat those terrible, 100-loss years and not spend money on, useless free agents and build up the draft picks and all that sort of stuff. And that's what the Orioles should be doing right now, but it's not been their MO under Pierre Angelos at any point, so I'm not expecting it this year either.
He is one of our fun baseball friends. He is Justin McGuire. You can follow his journey on Twitter at JMcGuireMLB. He's the host of the Baseball Book Podcast, and you can follow that on Twitter, as well as a contributor at Fansided and former MLB editor over at Sporting News for many years, and an Orioles fan. And your fandom goes back through the Juan Bells and the Manny Alexanders and the Glenn Davises. And I think we've seen all of that. In the case of the Machado situation right now, The mere fact that he's hitting 225 or 230, I mean, let's take out all the trade stuff and just where the team is, where these pitchers are, where Bundy is, where Gausman is, where Chris Davis is, also where Trey Mancini and Scope are, right? I mean, there is some hope there that if they could get some pitching back for Machado, for Britton, for Brock, if they just had a bloodletting and said, we're going to get the best of the best we can get back, let's do that. I really don't have a whole lot of confidence in this team that has had tremendous difficulty evaluating talent, which is why there is no pipeline here, and then to some degree getting talent like Arrieta, Mattis, Gausman, Bundy to the big leagues and getting them performing at this level. You look at Davies, you look at Rodriguez. There was some talent in this pipeline. It was all spent off to try to chase a championship. I'm glad they did it. I'm fine with it. But now it's time to have the sell-off the other way, and they seem to not have that gene in them, And if they do, McPhail was a genius at fleecing teams. It's really the reason they've been good the last 5 years. Really, it really goes back to Adam Jones and Tillman and being a fleecer. That's how you win these deals.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and you have to evaluate the talent that's there. And the thing you touched on with the pitching is that's the thing that has to be of the long-term concern to Orioles fans is this team for the last 25 years. Even longer than that, really, has shown no ability to develop pitching. None. I mean, all these guys Dylan Bundy and Kevin Gausman were both highly, thought of pitchers coming out of the draft. The other teams coveted them as well. It's not like the Orioles took crappy pitchers and nobody else wanted. They took, highly regarded guys. And, I know Bundy's had his injury issues and everything else, but you look at the way Kevin Gausman's performing this year, it's just shocking that he could be this bad. A guy with that much talent, a guy who's that young, with that much upside, who's looked at times, as good as he has, that he's performing as one of the worst pitchers in baseball is just shocking. And it's got to be of concern to you as an Orioles fan. Like, what's going on? Why can't they take these raw talents and make them into good Major League pitchers? I'm not even talking about great Major League pitchers. They can't make good Major League pitchers out of any of them. I mean, when's the last truly, good pitcher they brought up to the farm system? You honestly have to go back almost to Messina, And it's shocking and it's troubling, and I don't know what the answer is, but something is wrong in the way they develop pitchers, and I don't know what it is, but that's the thing they got to figure out, or none of this is going to mean anything ultimately.
Well, then there's who's making the decisions and the dysfunction of Dan Duquette wanting to go run the Blue Jays. This is when it comes back to roost, when you have the guy making the decisions on all the trades for the long-term future of your organization. And if they do deal Britton, Brock, O'Day, any of these guys, they're going to get some players back. Dan Duquette's not going to be here when those bananas ripen.
Right. That's true. Now, you hope that he's a man of integrity and will do his best for the long-term goal, or goals of the organization. But you're right, he's not going to be here beyond 2018. So, and Buck may not be. We don't know. We just don't know. This is going to be a very different-looking team in 2 years, and I think this is the opportunity. This is the chance to think long-term. And I'm with you. I don't know that there is anybody in that organization who's thinking long-term.
Just when we think we've suffered enough, we're going to suffer more. Justin, always great to have you on. I hope you can visit a little longer later in the season. And certainly, maybe we'll be getting together and evaluating the Manny Machado trade in 2 weeks, but I doubt that at this point.
Well, let's get together after the trade deadline, and we can talk about what they did and what they didn't do.
I'm not going to hold my breath, brother. I'm going to grab that beer on the left. I'm going to hand you the one on the right off your Twitter page. Hey, man, great having you on. We'll send everybody out to your book pods as well. You do a great job out there with that, and you're recommending books for me. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got an Orioles-related one coming up soon. It's the John Eisenberg's book. That's sort of like dual biography of Lou Gehrig and Cal Ripken. So that'll be of interest to Orioles fans.
Had John on earlier this week. He's one of our all-time favorites and one of my mentors. And I'm glad you're having him on. Go help him sell his book. We need to get more streak books sold for John.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't read it yet, but I have it in hand, and I'm about to open it up, and it looks like it's going to be really good.
Cal breaks the streak. I don't want to give the plot away.
Come on, man. Spoiler alert.
I know, man. Hey, be good, man. Take care of yourself.
All right, thanks, Nestor. Anytime.
You got it. Justin McGuire, Jay McGuire, MLB, is the host of the Baseball Book Pod, as well as contributor at Fansided and former MLB editor over at Sporting News. Go follow him out on Twitter. He's a good Orioles fan as well. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We are crystal clear. Anywhere your mobile device takes you, you can find us. Don't forget the Peter Principles. If you have been following this Orioles journey, I'll be doing some storytelling here next week on the radio, as well as out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault. The book is online. Chapters 9, 10, and 11 coming over the next 10 days. You can read them at The Peter Principles, as well as on our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook. And don't forget, if the Orioles do make any deals, if the Ravens do have any situations out in Owings Mills, you'll want to be on the WNST text service. Breaking the news, not delivering the spam. It's what we do. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.